Hi, I'm Grace Bryant with Be Whole, Be Happy, helping you have whole and happy relationships, intimacy, and life. Today, I'd like to talk to you about something really awful that we all live with, we've been indoctrinated into. We have been shown directly and indirectly, implicitly and explicitly, that it's the way that we're supposed to be. And if you have lived under the guise of this your whole life, like I have, then you'll probably have some questions as to what are you talking about and how do I not do that? I don't really know any other way. So what I'm talking about is perfectionism, the evils of perfectionism. So I'm from America. I was born in the 80s in Seattle. Very white culture here, and a culture that said you're supposed to be independent, you're supposed to do it all yourself. It is shameful to ask for help, and it is incredibly shameful, so much so that we don't talk about it, to fail. So recovering from that culture for the last 10, 15 years, and this is with no fault to my parents, to my teachers, to all the people who were doing exactly what they thought was best for me and for my siblings and for the generation that I grew up with. What I have learned is that the more messy I am, the more I fail, and the more that I talk about my failure, the better my life is. I used to get very stuck in my perfectionism. And my guess is that some part of you can relate to that, to a moment where it was not going as planned. It was supposed to look like this, but it doesn't look like this. And I kept trying to fit that square peg in the round hole. I kept trying to make something work that wasn't working. I kept trying to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. And my perfectionism has always said, you have to do it better than everyone else. So while I don't have all that much judgment around the way that other people do things, of course I'm human and I do, but my judgment of myself it looms so much larger and so much darker that it's pretty easy for me to forgive other people for making mistakes. And to say, wow, your failure was amazing. I can see that you learned so much from it. I learned so much from your failure. Thank you. But to turn that same lens on myself is hard. I went into a personal 10-day silent retreat recently, and I was talking to a dear friend. We've been friends for 20 years, just before I went into the retreat. And she said, you know, you are the hardest person on yourself than anyone I know. And of course, we're all harder on ourselves than anyone else. But this woman who is incredibly successful, who has been working in a really very fast-moving career for a long time, who I think of as pretty hard on herself, holds herself to a pretty rigorous, unmeetable standard, kind of put the mirror in my face and said, you are harder on yourself than anyone else that I know. And as usually happens to me, I get a big piece of information and then I go into silence for 10 days. And that stuck with me. What I uncovered in that retreat was how incredibly difficult it is for me to forgive myself. And how toxic my perfectionism is. It leads me into a place of comparison. Why my life doesn't look like someone else's life. Why my successes are different, how horrible my failures are in compared to other people. For me, the last 15 years of practicing yoga, the last 10 years of teaching yoga and tantra has broken down my ego enough to a place where I am grateful that not only can I see these things, not only can I let myself be a mess in private, behind closed doors. And it's allowed me to see how important it is to do that publicly every day. Often people share that they have the impression of me that I've got it all put together. I'm a relationship coach, so I must be amazing at relationships. I'm a spiritual growth coach, so wow, I must just have this incredible access to spirit. I'm so grateful for all of the teachings that I have received and continue to receive. And for me, besides my personal daily practice, the most important part of my path right now is letting go of my perfectionism, that it's supposed to be any certain way, and that's what the world is supposed to see of me. So how do we do this? When the media, especially social media, entertainment, commercials, advertising, it's all telling us that we're supposed to have it figured out, that we're supposed to be successful, we're supposed to have all this extra money to go buy these things and have these perfect, beautiful relationships, that life is supposed to look like this. My first suggestion is to find people who don't live that way. Is to identify one friend or one person in your life who lives outside of that box and who is a little bit more vulnerable than you. If you're not familiar with it, there's an incredible book, Braving the Wilderness, which is about vulnerability by Brené Brown. And it's kind of a step-by-step guide to how to break through our perfectionism, which is also breaking through our white culture. And show up messy. Show up just as broken as we are. And be on the path to being whole and happy, instead of on the path to someone else's matrix or someone else's description of what a successful life is supposed to be. When I was a kid, my dad used to always say, "Perfect." And it was the kind of thing he said over and over, and it drove me crazy. But just as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing how much I appreciate that. And I realize now what a gift it is to be able to see this moment in all of its wonderful imperfections as perfect, as exactly what it is. And here's something that happens when we start to embrace the moment as it unfolds, as it is, without resistance, as enough, as whole, as complete. Then we don't have to worry. We don't have to be in the anxiety of what will be, or the hardship of judging our past self, or the fear of making a mistake and failing. We can be a little bit more free in this moment, in our relationships, in our work, in the ways that we choose to give service to the world with our children. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your stories. What has perfectionism looked like in your life? Is it still a cage that you're trying to break free of, like it is for me? And as we find more and more of these people, as we start talking publicly, finding people who are more vulnerable than us, surrounding ourselves with community who is living as authentically as we know how, and trying to learn from each other to be better and better humans every day. And it's my hope that we can come together, stop feeling isolated, stop feeling so necessarily individualistic, and start asking each other for help, giving support just because. then maybe when we're able to see others living in this way, when we're able to come together and be a vulnerable, messy city, state, country, globe of humans, we can start to forgive ourselves, which is necessary before we can forgive anyone else, before we can move on from the harms of the past. Thank you. Thank you for witnessing me today. Thank you for seeing yourself. May you take whatever has moved you in these few moments into your day, into your week, into your life, into your relationships, into your intimate relationship with yourself. May you find a few moments to break free from perfectionism and to find the moment glorious just as it is. Namaste.